I'm going to tell you the best picks in every round for 2024 fantasy drafts, from the round 1 layups all the way to the deep sleepers in round 18. Whether you are a best ball bro or getting ready for a home league draft, this video will get you quickly up to speed on how to attack drafts this year. I'm Pete Overzet, this is the Deposit Kingdom, and these 18 players offer league-winning potential. The players I've selected in each round for this video all share similar criteria. One, they are guys I've clicked the most across my nearly 200 plus underdog drafts. I'm not recommending anyone who I don't have skin in the game with. And second, these picks reflect where I think the value pockets of the draft are for each position, which will also help us understand how to best construct teams and the optimal structures to utilize in drafts. And as an important disclaimer, the selections aren't meant to form the perfectly balanced team because it doesn't account for optimal positional allocation or stacking. That could be its own separate video. But rather, this is meant to highlight the best picks in a vacuum in each round. All right, let's get to it with the best player in round 1, wide receiver Justin Jefferson in Minnesota, ADP 5.5. As we discussed in our 10 insights after 50 drafts video, we know that we want at least 4 wide receivers before round 7. It's not that Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson are bad picks, but grabbing an elite wide receiver gives you flexibility to grab an RB value in another early round as opposed to being forced to play catch up at wide receiver. The player take here is simple. Jefferson is the best wide receiver in the league, and we are getting a discount because of quarterback uncertainty. But Jefferson is the certainty. He's the one who knocks. He was the wide receiver 1 in points per game on Underdog in his healthy games last year, and in his 4 games post-injury without Kirk Cousins last year, he had 30 receptions, 476 yards, and 2 TDs. As Underdog's Hayden Winks pointed out on Twitter, that is a 2,000 plus yard 17-game pace. Jefferson is quarterback proof and can weather early bumps on pure target volume alone, which could be massive with TJ Hawkinson likely to miss a good chunk of the regular season and now a potential suspension for Jordan Addison. By the end of the season, rookie JJ McCarthy will have his sea legs and the Vikings will get 2 home dome games in the fantasy playoffs to cap things off. Jefferson is my 3rd most drafted player in round 1 at 12.1%. I do have slightly more Puka and Garrett Wilson because of having more late draft slots, but there is a clear tier break between Justin Jefferson and those other guys. He remains an auto click at 105 or 106. Round 2, wide receiver Chris Olave, New Orleans, ADP of 17. The wide receivers are by far the best picks in round 2. You can order them however you please, feel free to argue amongst yourselves, but on the majority of builds, you want to be going wide receiver in this range, and Olave has just as much claim to going at 201 as anyone else. The player take here is also pretty clean. Chris Olave has given us all the reasons to believe he's an alpha wide receiver who just needs his offensive environment to catch up to his talent. Olave had a 26% target share his rookie year and a 25% target share last year. This gives him a high floor, but he also has a higher ceiling in 2024 for a couple of reasons. There's a new OC in Clint Kubiak who should bring more creativity to the offense, plus Olave is due for positive TD regression. Listen to this, he cleared 100 yards in 5 games last year and didn't score in any of them. That's gonna change going forward. Olave is my 2nd most drafted player in round 2 at 12.8%. And like Jefferson, he also provides avenues to a super cheap backdoor stack with Derek Carr and Juwan Johnson, who are both free in drafts right now. For more on Juwan Johnson, check out our previous video on injury discounts in current drafts. Round 3, wide receiver Malik Nabers, New York Giants, ADP 26.7. Nabers represents the end of the alpha wide receivers. There are other great wide receiver picks in round 3, but the rest are either clear number 2s or they face significant target competition from other pass catchers on their team. Here's the player take. The easiest sell on Nabers is that he was neck and neck with Marvin Harrison Jr. as a prospect. In 2023, he led all college players with 120.7 receiving yards per game and scored 14 TDs, which was the same as Marv and Rome Odunze, by the way. And this is all after he broke out as a sophomore for 1,000 plus yards. Nabers' absurd athleticism also gives him an insane ceiling. With a 9.88 RAS, he's in the top 40 most athletic wide receivers to enter the league since the year I was born. And since ESPN already doxed me, I'll let you know that was 1987. For those of you worried about an explosive rookie wide receiver out of LSU playing with a sketchy Giants quarterback in year one who has an affinity for making one-handed catches look easy, go look up what happened in 2014. Neighbors is tied for my most drafted player in round 3 at 17%. He's an automatic click for me at any point in round 3, and I have zero issue taking him at the end of round 2 if needed. You can easily make the case for him to go before Marvin Harrison if you were so inclined. Round 4, tight end Trey McBride, Arizona, ADP 47. We covered this in depth on a recent video, but elite tight end is the dominant strategy in 2024 drafts, and McBride is neck and neck with Mark Andrews as my favorite elite tight end target. Here's the player take. McBride was a monster in 2024 after the team finally, mercifully, ditched the Zach Ertz experiment, and in his 8 games with Kyler Murray, he was averaging 8+ targets, 6+ receptions, and 67+ yards a game. He finished behind only George Kittle and Travis Kelce in tight end yards per route run last year, and the list of other tight ends to put up 80+ receptions in their first 2 seasons is littered with mega studs and future Hall of Famers. Sure, McBride gets increased target competition with Marv, but this rising tide's gonna lift all boats, and it'll be good to have some other threat for defensive attention. McBride is my most drafted player in round 4 and my most drafted elite tight end at 15.6%. He pairs super well with a 3 wide receiver start and gives you a ton of roster flexibility throughout the rest of the draft because you never have to chase tight end production knowing he's anchoring your lineup. Round 5, wide receiver Keenan Allen, Chicago, ADP 53.9. Round 5 is a tricky round. If you don't already have an elite tight end, both Andrews and Dalton Kincaid are great options, but if you've already locked up a tight end, this is a range to continue to load up on wide receivers. RotoViz's Sean Siegel said on a recent episode of Best Ball Breakfast, which by the way is my weekly Best Ball live stream on the Pete Overs at YouTube channel every Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern, that he thinks the wide receivers in round 5 are actually better than the options in round 4. And I don't disagree. The Keenan player take is pretty simple. He's been an elite wide receiver for a long time and has constantly earned targets in many different offensive environments. His 2023 full season pace was absurd before he got hurt. 199 targets, 141 receptions, 626 yards, and 9 TDs. That is not a round 5 player. If Keenan were younger or the Bears didn't draft Odunze, he'd be going where DJ Moore is. So we're essentially getting 2 discounts because of both age and perceived competition. I have slightly more Jaden Reed than Keenan Allen because he's cheaper, but Allen is my favorite pick in this round and I have 13.5%. Continuing to bet on guys who are good, specifically when we are getting discounts, is a long-term winning strategy. The Keenan setup reminds me a bit of Mike Evans last year, who is also being massively discounted because of both age and new environment concerns. Before we head to round 6, make sure you subscribe to the Deposit Kingdom channel. We had 16,000 people watch the last video, which means there are a lot of lurkers strolling through these parts without a sub. Look, I see you right there. Just hit the sub. Hit the sub. Thank you. All right. Round 6, wide receiver Rashee Rice, Kansas City, ADP 66.1. Yep, we are still doing the wide receiver thing, and it's definitely possible to take a detour for a running back in this range, specifically if a round 5 guy like Josh Jacobs or James Cook falls, or if you were grabbing a tight end like Kyle Pitts or George Kittle. But there were only a handful of wide receivers after Rice before the potential breakout well runs dry. The player take for Rashee Rice is simple, and we covered it in our recent discounted players video. Rice was a 2-3 turn pick when the offseason started, but he's plummeted due to wide receiver additions by the Chiefs in free agency and the draft, as well as a CVS list of off-field incidents. But each day, it seems less and less likely that a significant suspension is given out for this season. In weeks 12 through 17 last season, Rice averaged 18 PPR points per game and earned a 27% target share and a 28% targets per route run. I have 11.3% of Rice, and I would like more. Even with the additions of Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy, Rice would be going at the 3-4 turn with Tank Dell and Zay Flowers if there were 0 suspension risks. So we were getting a nearly 2 full round discount. Important note here, this round 6 pick was initially going to be Jordan Addison. He's my most drafted player in round 6. But what I apparently failed to realize is that Addison is an idiot who will likely face a suspension and is now one of the worst picks in round 6. Moving on. Round 7, wide receiver Jackson Smith and Jigba in Seattle, ADP 77.3. With all due respect to the people's champ, Keon Coleman, or Fugazi third-year breakouts like Christian Watson and Jamison Williams, JSN represents the last true breakout candidate before we get to more meat and potato options like Cortland Sutton and Tyler Lockett. The player take here is also pretty clean. Not only did JSN have his rookie year prep plagued by multiple injuries, he was misutilized last year, plain and simple. Despite a college profile that indicates he can win all over the field, uninspired offensive coordinator Shane Waldron pigeonholed JSN into a screen merchant role, isolating all of his usage to low-value screens. I'll spare you the 2023 talking points about how he outproduced Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson at Ohio State, and instead feed you some hype from Seahawks exec Matt Berry from last month on the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast.
JSN's freaking unbelievable.
Yes.
I think between the coming off the hamstring, coming out of the draft, and then the hand injury where he is now compared to where he was this time last year, holy cow, guys. Holy cow. It's really cool.
Like 2023 all over again, JSN is one of my most drafted wide receivers at 20.5% and my favorite pick in this range. He's easy to backstack with Geno, as well as stack with that playoff quad we discussed in our schedule video. Round 8, running back Jonathan Brooks, Carolina, ADP 87.6. If you're loading up on wide receivers early, you'll want some true upside in your 0 RB room. Enter rookie Jonathan Brooks, who can be a late season hammer. We discussed why he's one of the most mispriced players on the board in our recent discounted players video. So we are essentially getting a double discount on Brooks for both the injury and the landing spot. The team has been non-committal on whether Brooks would be ready for the start of training camp, which is placing seeds of doubt in drafters' minds. If there were zero injury concerns on Brooks, he likely would have gone even higher in the real NFL draft, and had he landed on the Cowboys or Chargers, he would have been a 4th round pick. Still, even on the Panthers, we are getting a discount because the market is assuming a slow start to the season. We saw a similar dynamic play out last year with Breece Hall. The team telegraphed a slow start. They brought in Dalvin Cook, and they didn't fully unleash Hall until week 6. And no one missed that early season production. If there were no slow start concerns, Brooks would be going 2 rounds earlier in the Kenneth Walker, Rashad White, and Joe Mixon range. So how do we play it? Similar to Rice, I think Brooks is one of the best picks on the board. His ADP falls nicely at the top of the running back sweet spot, right after the wide receiver talent starts to fall off a cliff. As a quick refresher on his prospect profile, Brooks was a monster at Texas. He posted a 76% backfield dominator rating and accounted for 38% market share of the touches in the Longhorns offense. I'm double the field on Brooks currently at 16.3%, and I'd like even more. The only thing that makes it tricky is there's a ton of great picks in this range. Zamir White, Jalen Warren, James Conner, and Zach Moss are all in play for me, as is rookie tight end Brock Bowers. But of all of those guys, Brooks is the one who has the best chance to be a late season difference maker. Round 9, quarterback Jaden Daniels out of Washington, ADP of 101.2. Jaden Daniels gives us the lone discount on a Konami code quarterback, aka a signal caller with significant rushing upside. From a structure perspective, Daniel gives you max flexibility. Not only does he have multiple backdoor stacking options with fellow rookies Ben Sinnott and Luke McCaffrey, but he also works in a 2 quarterback build with another top 15 option, or as an upside option in a 3 quarterback build where you punt the other 2 options until late. The Daniels thesis is all about rushing. Cliff Kingsbury was never shy about letting Kyler Murray run in Arizona. Murray never ranked lower than 4th among quarterbacks in rushing attempts, and since 2016, no quarterback had more yards per game off of scrambles in college than Daniels at 44.8. That's more than Lamar, more than Kyler, more than Fields, and more than Anthony Richardson. I'm sitting at 13.5% Daniels, and I packed a ton of bags earlier when we highlighted him as an obvious riser back on May 1st. As for Jaden Daniels, how many times have we seen this movie? Trey Lance, Anthony Richardson last year. The Konami code quarterbacks are a fantasy cheat code, and other than Kyler Murray and Daniels, all of the QBs with massive rushing ceilings go in the top 5 rounds. I fully expect Daniels to rise 3+ rounds and settle around Kyler's current ADP in the coming months, and he's a priority target for me. The Daniels bet feels very similar to me as the Richardson one, and yet there is a big gap in their ADPs. Our projections at Fantasy Life have them neck and neck despite a nearly 50-spot ADP gap. Round 10, running back Tajay Spears, Tennessee, ADP 109.5. In round 10, we have entered the portion of the draft where all of the best picks are running backs, so we want to take advantage of this 0 RB sweet spot. With Spears, we are getting a young, explosive back who can catch passes on an offense that is indicating it wants to play faster and throw more than they did under Vrabel. Spears was sneakily 9th at the running back position in targets last year with 70, which is conveniently one spot ahead of his new backfield mate, Tony Pollard. He's not just a scat back either. He was 7th in evasion percentage among running backs with at least 50 carries last year. And as I recently wrote about on Fantasy Life, I don't mind taking both Pollard and Spears together, but I do prefer Spears and have selected him in 14.9% of my drafts. And the team is already talking up using them interchangeably. And if that's true, it's possible both Spears and Pollard pay off their cost at ADP, and if one of them were to get hurt, the other would be an absolute smash. By the way, I've been mentioning the Fantasy Life newsletter. Make sure you guys subscribe. It's completely free, and I'm now writing it every single weekday, and we'll be dishing out news, updates, and fantasy nuggets on a daily basis. On to round 11, running back Chase Brown in Cincinnati, ADP 123.5. We're still in the 0 RB sweet spot, and the wide receiver options are fairly uninspiring in this range. My hottest take is that Chase Brown is this year's Devon Achane, and Zach Moss can be this year's Raheem Mostert. Brown flashed mega upside in the receiving game on limited targets in 2023, and you've likely already seen the screen pass he took to the house last year, so I will spare you that clip. But he led all running backs in yards per route while also finishing 4th in evasion percentage among running backs behind only Jalen Warren, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Kenneth Walker. It's good company. So the question with Brown isn't talent, it's opportunity. If he gets it, watch out. Every time I try to pump the brakes on Brown, I fail. I'm at 25.5%. And look, I like Moss. He was fine last year and is definitely the favorite to lead the backfield in touches, but Brown has so many paths to being relevant in one of the best offenses in football, whether that's on splash plays, an injury to Moss, or just taking this backfield over. Round 12, running back Zach Charbonnet, Seattle, ADP 132.5. I will say the rookie wide receivers are interesting in this range if you do need to go that direction, but we are still firmly in the territory where the running backs are the best bets. The Charbonnet bet is pretty clean. At worst, he's a contingent back behind Kenneth Walker, and we know what he can do with the starting gig because it happened 3 times last year, and he averaged 20 total touches in those games. But there's also room for upside here if he carves out a standalone role, perhaps wrestling away more passing work from Walker, and or if the offense under Grubb reaches new heights. I'm at almost 23% Charbs. Sean Siegel is close to implementing a 1 Seahawk in every draft rule, and it's hard to blame him. Charbonnet's setup is better than it was last year, and yet he's cheaper. Load up. Round 13, running back Jalen Wright out of Miami, ADP 157.4. The wide receivers in this round are Darnell Mooney, Quentin Johnston, Jermaine Burton, and Demario Douglas. So yeah, we would still rather be taking RBs in this range, and Wright fits the bill. This take on Wright is pretty simple. Jalen Wright is very fast, 4.38 40, and he's super athletic, 38-inch vertical and 99th percentile broad jump. Mike McDaniels likes fast athletic players. The Miami Dolphins running backs score a shit ton of points. Jalen Wright is a Miami running back. But if you want the slightly longer bull case, Wright was an early declare, cleared 1,000 yards on only 137 carries in Tennessee's super spread out offense with 7.4 yards per carry, and he also flashed receiving upside with 22 catches after only 8 receptions in the previous 2 seasons combined. I'm at almost 15%, and I will admit, Wright likely needs an injury to Mostert or Achane, but in that binary outcome, he has league-winning upside. It's the exact kind of bet I want to make in this range. Round 14, running back Ray Davis in Buffalo, ADP 166.9. I realize I sound like a broken record, but the running backs continue to be the best bets in these double-digit rounds. And if anything, doing this exercise further solidifies how important it is to get your wide receiver firepower early because you want to save these picks for upside running backs as much as possible. The player take here is more anti-James Cook than it is pro-Davis. The Bills are desperate for a complement to James Cook, and Ray Davis is a huge upgrade on the dusty Latavius Murray and Leonard Fournette types that the team kicked the tires on last year. Davis is an older prospect. He turns 25 in November, but he produced immediately and on 3 different college teams. He had over 1,100 scrimmage yards and 10 TDs as a freshman at Temple, and then over 1,200 scrimmage yards in 2022 for Vanderbilt, and then finally a massive final season for Kentucky, 1,452 scrimmage yards, 14 rushing, and 7 receiving TDs, which was third in college football behind only Blake Corum among 2023 rookies. I've honestly been shocked by Davis's ADP. I'm at 19%. The team has never fully committed to James Cook, and they constantly yanked him off the field near the goal line last year. Davis should have standalone role right out of the gate with massive contingent upside if Cook were ever to get hurt. He's a no-brainer selection in this range. Round 15, Bucky Irving, Tampa Bay, ADP 175.4. All right, I promise, this is the last running back. Irving is the last call for running backs with both standalone value and 3-down contingent upside. The Bucky dynamic with Rachaad White is a similar dynamic to Ray Davis with Cook. White is a solid pass catcher who defaulted into a ton of running back volume because the team had no other viable options last year. Enter Irving, who can carry the rock. As a senior, he handled 242 touches for 1,593 yards from scrimmage, which was 7th among all college players and 1st among all 2023 rookie running backs, and he scored 13 TDs. He's also a great receiver, which gives him paths to take over the entire backfield if White stumbles or gets hurt. I will not stop clicking Irving. I'm at 22%, and there's almost zero downside at this price. At worst, we know the team is desperate for a number 2 behind him. In the median, he'll be a complement to Rachaad, but it's possible in high-end scenarios that Rachaad White continues to rush poorly and Irving can become the 1A by season's end. Round 16, wide receiver Luke McCaffrey out of Washington, ADP 186.5. The rookie wide receivers are almost always the best bets you can make late in the draft. Last year alone, we saw Jaden Reed, Tank Dell, and Puka Nacua all emerge from this range of the draft. And Luke's measurables look a lot like his brother's, which bodes extremely well for his versatility as a wide receiver. He had an abbreviated production profile due to changing positions, but he had 71 receptions, 992 yards, and 13 TDs while adding 15 rush attempts for 117 yards in his final season, which put him over 1,100 total scrimmage yards. The draft capital in the 3rd round, an opportunity to play right away out of the slot with Curtis Samuel gone, make Luke a great bet. I'm at 16.3%, and another bonus here is getting to backstack him with the aforementioned Jaden Daniels or play him as a Week 17 bringback to the premium Atlanta pieces. Round 17, quarterback, Drake May, New England, ADP 192.2. This is actually a very solid year for late-round quarterback with intriguing rookie quarterbacks all going late due to ambiguity surrounding their early season production. May's profile offers elite upside at bargain prices, making him perfect as a QB2 or an upside swing in 3 quarterback builds. Like many toolsy quarterbacks to come before him, May has a wide range of outcomes. I mean, his sims in the RotoViz box score scout include Zach Wilson and Marcus Mariota on one hand, but also Andrew Luck and Patrick Mahomes on the other. The key selling points are his rushing ability. He averaged over 43 rush yards per game in his 28 appearances, and he's got a big arm. I'm at 15% May, and I love targeting him late because of all the backdoor stacking options with him. The entire New England offense is cheap, and the discount on the Pats this year is eerily reminiscent of the situations with the Texans last year, where concerns on the quality of the team and the rookie quarterback discounted the entire offense. Round 18, another rookie quarterback, Bo Nix in Denver, ADP 204.4. Same thing as May. This is a sweet spot to get your final QB, and we know who Bo Nix is. He is Sean Payton's guy, and there is no games played concern here. Bo Nix is the definition of an experienced college quarterback with the most career starts at the position in NCAA history. He will be the Broncos starter week 1, and we should expect Nix to check down more often than he tucks it and run in Sean Payton's offense, but he had at least 54 rush attempts in all 5 of his college seasons and compiled 744 yards and 20 TDs on the ground in his 2 years at Oregon. I'm at 15.6% Nix right now, in large part because there are also 2 very cheap backdoor stack options with Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin. And yes, people forget that Nix and Franklin played together at Oregon, shared the shower together at Oregon, all that jazz, and accounted for 1,383 yards and 14 touchdowns together. So even though the goal of this exercise wasn't to outline the perfect team by ADP, but rather highlight the best individual picks in each round in a vacuum, you can see that it does form something closely resembling a strong squad. We got 3 quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and Bo Nix. We got 7 running backs, Jonathan Brooks, Tajay Spears, Chase Brown, Zach Charbonnet, Jalen Wright, Ray Davis, and Bucky Irving. We got 7 wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, Chris Olave, Malik Neighbors, Keenan Allen, Rashee Rice, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Luke McCaffrey. And we got our lone elite tight end in Trey McBride. Obviously, real roster construction needs would dictate that you need a second tight end and you need more stacking, but hopefully this gives you a strong sense of where the best values are on the board in 2024 drafts. There are plenty of other players I love that didn't make the cut. I only could pick one for each round, and this meant a lot of late round rookie wide receivers I had to leave out. Maybe that'll be another video. But depending on what detours you make away from wide receiver early will determine who are the best picks for you in the later rounds. But overall, this exercise drives home a few key points we've made repeatedly across our videos this year. Get your wide receiver firepower early, secure an elite tight end, load up on running backs in the middle rounds, and round out your roster with high upside rookies in the final rounds. By the way, shout out to David Phillippi and Michael Dubner who helped me on this video. If you'd like to see your exposure spliced out by round like mine were, be sure to check out Dubner's Best Ball Tracker, which I will link to in the show notes down below. It's a great resource to help you keep track of your drafts and understand what you want to do differently going forward. We'll be back soon with another perfect draft challenge video with a special guest.